Thank you, Giuseppe, and thank you to the organizer to having invited me to present this paper, which is co-authored by Furio Camillo Rosati, also from the University of Rome, Tor Vergata. And the title, you read it already, is Immigrant Supply of Marketable Childcare and Native Fertility in Italy. Why we decided to focus on immigration and fertility at the same time. Actually, in the recent decades, many high-income countries have experienced a decline in the fertility rate. And the well-known implication of a low fertility rate which reach a level far below the replacement rate, which is 2.1 children per woman, incremented a large debate. At the same time, in the same decades, immigration flows have substantially increased, increasing also the supply of childcare services. Migrants specialized in childcare services can affect fertility in two ways. From one hand, they can improve the stance of the market, and on the other hand, they may reduce the reservation wage of the sector. And both mechanisms, so increased supply and reduced prices, can reduce the cost of rearing children, and so affecting fertility.
Sorry if I interrupt you. I think you may want to go full screen.
Yes, sorry, you're right. I forgot it.
That's fine.
Okay. Actually, from a theoretical point of view, the effect of non-household members supplying domestic services is not univocal on the on total fertility, since the effect depends on parents' utility function. And so, without any restriction on the theoretical model, we need the results of an empirical analysis in order to assess the capability of childcare services to affect fertility. And so the aim of the paper is exactly to evaluate the effect on fertility of the large and unexpected increase in the presence of immigrants occurred in Italy in 2007. We choose the 2007 because it's the year when Bulgaria and Romania entered the European Union. And the exact time at which this enlargement was implemented allows us to consider the case as a quasi-experimental, a natural experiment, let's say. And I'll detail all the timeline of the enlargement in a few slides. And this is the outline of today's presentation. So first of all, I'll summarize the related literature. Then I'll present the, the case study. I'll describe in details the empirical analysis and the identification strategy. Then I'll show you the main results along with some robustness test. If I have time, I'll show you also the results of the heterogeneity analysis, and then I'll conclude the presentation. Okay, so the paper wants to contribute to two strands of the literature. First of all, it relates to those papers that look at the so-called marketization of domestic services. on which there is a recently issued review of the literature on the European Economic Review by Barr and co-authors. Most of these studies, anyway, show a positive effect on market supply of domestic services on fertility in general. But the papers relates also to those studies that look at migrant supply of household services on the, let's say, household choices. But many of the existing studies have looked mainly at the female labor supply. Finding a positive effect, especially for high-skilled and highly educated native women. More specifically, the effect of immigration on female labor supply is observed mainly in the extensive margins of labor supply and not on the intensive margins of labor supply. So the working women increase the number of hours they supply in the market, but there are no new women that enter the market because of the supply of household services by immigration. To our knowledge, there are only 2 papers that look directly at the effect of immigration on fertility. They are very recent, and one is on the UK and the other is on the US. And they find contradictory results. Romiti finds no effect on fertility, while CEIS finds a negative effect on fertility. And so our paper adds a new evidence on a topic on which empirical results are very scarce. Okay, let me spend some slides on the case study. In 2004, the EU 25 members reached an agreement with Bulgaria and Romania, and according to which, the 1st January 2007, Bulgarians and Romanians became EU citizens, and so were allowed to travel and live in the Schengen areas. But when the agreement was reached in 2004, the EU 25 members could restrict the access to workers coming from Bulgaria and Romania for a period of 7 years following the agreement. And Italy was among those countries that decided for a transitory period. And so the access of Bulgarians and Romanians to the Italian labor market was supposed to start on the 1st January 2012. Nonetheless, the 28th December 2006, the new Italian government decided to grant access to workers in some specific sectors, among which also the personal service sector, from the very beginning of the enlargement, so the 1st January 2007, and so just 3 days after the announcement was made. That's why we consider the inflows of immigrants as unexpected. And the result was indeed a very large increase in the presence of immigrants in the personal service sectors. The figures show you the immigrant to native workers ratio. In some selected sectors. Those sectors were the allowed sectors for the Bulgarians and Romanians, and were all above the national average of the immigrants to native workers ratio. As you can see, the largest increase was actually in the personal services activities, which corresponds to Nature Code 1996. And the personal service sector is the upper blue line. And this increase was due mainly to Romanians. Here you have the share of immigrants in the sector, in the personal service sectors. So that's the number of immigrants over the total employment of the sector. And the dark blue line is total immigrants over total employment of the sector, while the upper line is the number of Romanian immigrants in over the total employment of the sectors. So the increase was associated to a redoubling in the employment of Romanian in the sector, while the Bulgarian employment remained constant around the low level of the 2006. So that's why we decided to focus only on Romanian, and more precisely, we decided to focus only on female immigrants, because looking at the gender decomposition of the employment on the sector, we observed that mainly female workers are employed in this personal service sector. And to estimate the effect of immigration on native fertility, we decided to exploit the so-called network effect. So the fact that newly arrived immigrants locate over the territory according to the distribution of their connational already living in the country. In this graph, I show the units of analysis, which are the LMAs, the local market areas, which are groups of municipalities constructed by the Italian National Statistical Institute according to information on commuting patterns of workers. So these local market areas are like the commuting zones in the US, and can consider local markets because demand and supply of labors are included in these areas. So in Italy, there are 610 local market areas, and I ordered these local market areas according to the share of immigrants from Romania living in them in 2006, the pre-treatment year. And these are represented by the dark blue dots here in the figure. While the light blue circles represent the flows of female immigrants from Romania in 2007. As you can see, the two correlates a lot. And so, yes, Giuseppe, please.
Well, no, I mean, you can finish commenting this. I have a remark to make after.
Okay. So, okay, the dotted line represents the median of the distribution of the share of immigrants from Romania in 2006, and the dashed line represents the 75th percentile. Okay, I have to change slide. So, if you want.
So I was just wondering. So what you showed in the previous graphs is basically the degree of penetration of Romanian or Bulgarian immigrants in each sector, because the denominator is the labor force in that sector. But I was wondering if you have some descriptives on the composition of the inflow by sector and also by gender, like if you can really show, and also here you are plotting basically the distribution of Romanian immigrants across LMAs. So I was thinking if you have a similar graph for female Romanians or for workers in that specific sector.
Look, okay, I actually have a table in the appendix of the paper which look at the gender composition of the sector. And in general, 80% of workers in the sector are female, are women. and more than 20% of them are from Romania. But actually, I don't have a graph showing these figures. Actually, this paper is under revision. We received recently the reviewer report, and they ask exactly for that graph that you are asking. But it's not
I
ready
swear
yet.
I'm not referee to.
But it's not ready yet for that graph. So I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Anyway, on this basis, we decided to implement a difference in difference approach. We use two specifications. One is with a discrete treatment, so a standard diff and diff approach. And we consider treated the LMAs above the median of the distribution of the share of Romanians. And in another estimation, we consider treated only those above the 75th percentile. But because the choice of a threshold in this case is somehow arbitrary, we decided to implement the diff and diff with a continuous treatment. And so the dosage is given simply by the number of immigrant women from Romania living in each LMAs. So in formula, the first the first specification is that one, the number of newly born babies in LMAI in year T is regressed on a dummy, indicating if the LMA is above the median or the 75th percentile, interacting with a dummy for the post-treatment years. As a controls, we include the number of Italian women aged 15-49, so the fertile period of a woman. And then also a vector of controls in the pre-treatment periods. Lambda I and tau T are respectively LMA and ER fixed effects. The estimating equation for the continuous case is that one. So we regress the number of newly born babies in LMA I in year T on the number of female immigrants from Romania arrived in the LMAs in the previous year. As you can see, we decided to lag the dependent variable with respect to the female fertile population of the LMA and the immigration on the immigrants living in the LMA because of obvious consideration about the pregnancy time. And the estimates are carried out for the period from 2005 to 2010. Okay, of course, non-time varying effects and common trends are absorbed by the fixed effect, but still the estimated coefficient can be biased, mainly because immigrants can decide to locate where the demand for personal services is growing due to an higher fertility, both actual or desired. And so to obtain an unbiased estimation of the treatment effect, we use an instrumental variable approach. So we combine the diff and diff with the instrumental variables. And we used three instruments, all implemented in three separately, so in three different estimations. First, we reweight the Italian flows of female immigrants from Romania on the share of immigrants from the same country in the pre-treatment year, which is 2006. And we decided 2006 because we have control for that year. But we have control variables for that year. But because 2006 can be too recent as an year to claim exogeneity of the shares, we check the results also using other two instruments. One is the distance from the gateway of entry, which is an instrument already used in the migration literature. And the other one is a standard shift share instrument. So we look at all the immigrants in Italy, but looking at the province level, because we used data far in the past from the 1991 census, which are provided only at the province level. Okay, to explain better these three instruments, I show you also the formula. So the first one is just to reweighting the flow of women from Romania in year T arrived to Italy on the share of Romanians, both male and female, in 2006. We decided to use the share of both male and female immigrants from Romania because we think that the network effect operates for, I mean, women that locate over the LMAs because their connational, both male and female, live there, not only female immigrants already arrived in the past in the LMA. But of course, this 2006 year is too recent.
Sorry, here the shares are at the LMA level.
Level, yes. Okay. Exactly. I is still the unit of analysis is still the LMA. While the total flow is for the Italy. So okay, but to reassure about the endogeneity of our instrument, we have looked directly at the correlation between the location of immigrants across LMAs and the outcome of interest, which is the number of births. So we took data from a survey conducted by the Italian National Statistical Institute in 2005 that have asked to native women about their willingness to have an additional children. And controlling for age, education level, number of cohabiting children and, of the native women, we see that the share of immigrants from Romania in 2006 do not correlate with the willingness of having an additional children by native women. Okay, this is the first instrument, but if it's not convincing, we use a second instrument, which is the distance to the closest gateways of entry. According to the Italian Ministry of Interior, most immigrants from Romania entered Italy from the two main airports, Milan and Rome, and from the land route of Slovenia. So for each LMA, we compute the distance to these getaways, and we consider only the minimum value of the three distance, and we use it to reweight the immigrant flows of female women, or of women from Romania to Italy in year T. And the last instrument is the standard shift share instrument. So we consider data from the 1991 census, which are provided by province level, which is NUTS 3 level, and are provided only by micro area of origin, no country of origin. So we consider all the immigrants, not only Romanian women. And we reweight the total flow by micro area M in year T over the share of immigrants from the same micro area living in the same LMA, in the same province in 1991. And then we sum up over all the macro areas that are present in Italy
So sorry, ultimately this thing varies at a macro area level, or
At the province,
at the province level.
as you can see, varies at the unit of analysis high is province.
Okay, so
because we sum up over micro areas. Okay, so we have all the immigrants living in province high in year T, but this number is reconstructed by reweighting the flow on the share in the 1991. Okay, the data are from administrative records. And from the administrative records, we take the number of births, the female population, and also immigrant populations by municipalities, and then we group the municipalities according to the LMAs. And data on controls are drawn from the Italian LFS, Italian Ministry of Finance, and Istat. Those controls are employment rate, personal income data, and share of public expenditure in childcare services. And to select controls to include in the regression, we run a balance test. So here you have LMAs divided according to the median of the share of Romanians in 2006 in the upper panel, and divided according to the 75th percentile in the lower panel. In the first column, you have the average of the variable for the treated group. In the second column, you have the average of the variable for the control group. Then you have the result of the t-test, and also the results of the test slightly modified, of the t-test slightly modified as suggested by Imbens and Rubin in their paper in 2005. Okay, so as you can see, the outcome variable, the fertility rate, is well balanced in all the specification, in all the division that we make. While we include as controls in the regression the per capita childcare services, per capita income, employment rate, and also the age composition of the female native population. And here are some descriptive statistics of all the variables included in the model, and finally the results. These results are for the discrete specification of the diff in diff. They shows us that the LMAs more exposed to the treatment have experienced an increase in fertility after 2007. More precisely, if we consider the median of the distribution of the share of immigrants from Romania, the immigration has increased fertility by 18 additional births, which corresponds to around 2% of the pre-treatment average, or by 28 additional births, which corresponds to about 3% of the pre-treatment average, if we consider the 75th percentile as a threshold to divide treated and control LMAs. But as I already said, the choice of a threshold here is arbitrary. So we decided to implement the diff and diff with the continuous treatment. And also with this specification, immigrant women from Romania have a positive effect on the number of births by native women. From a back on the envelope calculation, every additional immigrants, for every 40 additional immigrants, we have an additional birth after 2007, which in percentage terms correspond to about 2% of the increase of the number of births. This back on the envelope calculation are made on the basis of if I'm not wrong, on the basis of the OLS results, but as you can see, results do not change very much if we consider the IV estimation. Both the network instrument and the distance instrument. What is different between the two IV estimates is the F statistics, which drops if we consider the distance instrument, but it's still above the rule of thumb of 10. Okay, I see a question. Am I wrong or not?
Yeah, there is indeed a question in the chat. Would you like to finish your?
Okay, okay, I will answer later.
Thought? Yeah, okay.
Okay. Okay. First, concern about these estimates. Are they consistent? Wait. Yeah. According to a paper on QJ by Bertrand and co-author, among them also Duflo, the standard errors computed of a different diff whose outcomes is correlated over time can be inconsistent. And so they recommend to compute the standard errors using a bootstrap procedure. And so here you see the standard error computed with the bootstrap procedures. But because our standard error are already clustered at the LMA level, the level of significance of the coefficients do not change even if we compute the standard error with a bootstrap procedure. And finally, the result for the standard shift share instrument, the scale of the effect is not comparable since here the results are computed at the for an estimation at the province level, not the LMA level. But if we relate the coefficient to the average in the pretreatment period, we find that immigration has increased the number of births by about 4% with respect to the pretreatment average. Okay. For a diff in diff, fundamental is the pre-trend, so the parallel trend assumption. For the continuous treatment, it's difficult to test for the parallel trends, and we decided to implement these two tests. First of all, we focused only on the years from 2005 to 2007. And we consider only 2007 as a treatment, as the treatment year. Recall that the dependent variable is lagged. So in our estimates, the number of births, dependent variables, is considered treated in 2008, so 1 year after the inflows arrived to Italy. So it's like a placebo test on the pre-treatment years. And as you can see, in these years, immigration did not affect fertility in Italy. The other test that we decided to implement is simply estimating a linear regression model in which both the dependent and the covariates are differentiated over the pre-treatment years. So as a dependent variable, we have the difference in the number of births between 2005 and 2007. And as an explanatory variable, we have the number of female immigrants in Italy from 2000 and differentiated over the period 2004-2006. And again, the effect is not significant. As a further informal test for the pre-treatment period, we plot the raw data and on the fertility rate, and we divided the LMAs according to the median or the 75th percentile. The graph for the median is the upper one, and the graph for the 75th percentile is the lower one. Treated LMAs are in dark blue, and while controls are the light blue lines. They seems to be on the same path, but they seems to converge after 2006. So contemporaries to the flow of immigrants from Romania. Then we have a further robustness test on this year, the 2006. First of all, we estimate the model with no lags. So the number of births are requested on the contemporary migration stock in the LMAs. And these are reported in first and second column. First column is the OLS result, and second column is the IV results. The coefficients are still positive, even if they are lower in magnitude. And then we excluded this the first treatment year, 2007, from the analysis, but still we see an effect on native fertility. Okay, the last concern can be about a self-selection into treatment. So female native women can decide to move and to locate where the supply of domestic providers is increasing. And so here you see a correlation between the flow of Romanian from flows of women from Romania and internal flows of native women, and the two do not correlate. So the movement of native women are not driven by the arrival of Romanian. Okay, how much time do I have?
Well, you're technically almost done. So
okay.
Yeah, I guess you have 3 minutes, something like that.
Okay, so I can show some just 2 or 3 graphs showing the heterogeneity of the effect. Here you have here we have plotted the coefficients, the estimated coefficients of the model along with the standard error. And here you have the estimation of the full model, so for the entire country. And then you have the coefficients for the model estimated for several separate areas of the countries. And as you can see, the overall effect is driven mostly by what happened in the center of Italy. Where most of the immigrants arrived in 2007. And indeed, also the first year, which is the year of the mass arrival from Eastern Europe, is the year where we observe the greater effect. But we don't see an heterogeneous effect when we divide LMAs by their size. So conclusions. Of course, several countries have experienced a large inflow of low-skilled migrants that specialized in the supply of personal services, so services to the households. But there are few studies that have analyzing the effects of these inflows on fertility. And so the paper provides a novel evidence on the impact of immigration on native fertility, focusing on the case of Italy in 2007. We have implemented a definitive approach combined with an instrumental variable approach. And we have found that women from Romania increased the number of births by native women by about 2 or 4%, according to the model specification. Which is actually an economically meaningful impact. And so providing services that help parental child care can represent an avenue to counteract the tendency of fertility decline in many high-income countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Giuseppe, do you have a...
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say thanks, and I wanted to encourage some questions, but I have one myself. So I was thinking in the specification that you showed, you are controlling for some commuting zone, let's say fixed effects measured at 2006. And I was wondering if you control for like any measure of a sector at the commuting zone level. Why am I saying this? Because after all, what is your exposure is the exposure to the inflow of Romanian migrants, and you are also including because of the network effects, you're also including males, for instance. So I'm thinking maybe in some commuting zones, there is a concentration of Romanian workers, also male ones, who work, for instance, on construction. And maybe, I don't know, that could influence the supply of real estate, which could have, for instance, some influence on fertility. So in order to pin down this mechanism that it's coming from childcare provision, I was thinking if you could somehow control for the fact that, you know, many Romanian male workers work in construction, also because there are language barriers and stuff like that. So I was thinking if you had any of these controls.
Okay, actually, I didn't think about it, which is a very good point. I don't know if I can control for let's say sector specification of the LMA. For sure, I can control this when I implement the model at the province level, and for sure I will try it. Yeah.
Even a province level control of you know, of the share of construction over the overall employment, I think that would be.
Yeah, because you're right. Most male immigrants from Romania specialize in the construction sector. And of course, it's an important sector for what you say, the real estate price.
I think, Rama, there was one question in the chat by Giorgia Conte. Giorgia, would you like to ask the question out loud, or would you like me to convey the question?
Hello, thank you very much.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. It's really interesting. I was wondering, I think you mentioned sometimes that the time of arrival of migrants in Italy, it's arbitrary. And I was a bit confused because it sounds like that as soon as the restrictions on the new member states are lifted, they should be free to go. So can you please repeat what is the reason that you use the continuous diff and diff?
And actually, when the diff and diff, it's when I say that the continuous specification of the diff and diff, continuous is the treatment variable. So it's not a dummy variable that indicates if the LMA is treated or untreated. So 1 or 0, but the treatment is measured as a dosage of treatment, and it's the number of immigrants arrived to the LMA in the year. But of course, the post-treatment period is always after 2007, when the workers were allowed to enter Italy and to work in that sector.
Thank you. So it's continuous in the sense that it increases over time since the restrictions are lifted.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thanks a lot.
In the meantime, while we work for further questions, one question I had was when you showed the graphs on the heterogeneity analysis, do you find any heterogeneity by education or income level of the families of the newborns?
Okay, the problem is that the data are from the administrative, let's say, registry. So we observe the aggregate number of newly born children, and we do not observe the characteristics of the women from which they born. We control for the average employment rate of the LMA. And also for the average per capita income of the LMA. So the analysis is not at individual level, it's at the LMA level, and so we include controls at the LMA level, that controls that you are mentioning.
And there are no like, no, I suppose you don't really have that, right? Like average, no, education levels or something. No, that would also not make much sense, I guess.
I think I can have the education level, even if I think it correlates with the employment and rate, and also the per capita, the average per capita income. But I can check. I can try. Yeah, thank you.
No, that makes sense. It will probably, I think so too. Yeah. One other question I had is more regarding this this episode that you are relying upon. So do you think the basically increase that you observe, some of it could also be due to sort of legalizing immigration in a way? Like, do you think there was like a major, how do you say, problem of illegal immigration, maybe from Romania beforehand, and now they just had a legal?
Okay, we have discussed on it with my co-author. Actually, it can be the case. That after 2007, there is the increase that we observe can be due to the legalization of their presence in Italy. But if it's the case, this will bias towards zero the effect that we find, because some of the effect is anticipated in the pre-treatment period. I think, even if we are still working on that.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question by Joël. Joël, would you like to ask the question out loud?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, it seems most results that you showed us in the regressions were looking at number of children. Have you done the regressions also for the fertility rate, because you've shown us some graphs then looking at fertility rate, and I was just wondering whether the latter, so the fertility rate, wouldn't control better for example, local size effects of the areas you're looking at.
Okay, so we have discussed a lot on this as well. Because somebody think that the best specification is to have the fertility rate on the left-hand side of the equation, and then the immigration rate on the right-hand side of the equation. But okay, I tell you from the very beginning that we have tried both, and the results do not change. The problem to use the fertility rate as an outcome and the immigration rate as an explanatory variable is that they have the same denominator, and so the outcome variable and let's say the x can correlate only because of the same denominator, which is dominant with respect to the enumerator. So at the end, we decided to present the result for the model specified as the absolute number of births on the left-hand side of the equation, the absolute number of female immigrants from Romania on the right-hand side of the equation, and the number of women, which would be the denominator, as to control for the scale of the LMA.
I see. Okay. Thanks.
All right. So I guess I can, unless there are any more questions, I can close the seminar.